Wheels coverage of the 2023 PCA Convention and Trade Show is brought to you by Rocky Patel.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlie Minato, and hopefully there is no echoing going on. And this is Half Wheels PCA 2023 preview show number 2. To my right, and I guess right with me on the screen as well, is Brooks Whittington. Brooks, how are you?
I'm doing excellent.
That's good to hear. Like I mentioned, this is our PCA 2023 Convention Trade Show preview show number 2. This is something we do every year before the PCA Convention Trade Show, and we are back now for 2023, and there is once again an echo.
How about now? Is there still an echo? All right, so hopefully that's fixed it. We've been having echoing issues. On that note, if you were here for last week's show, I'm sorry. That was terrible. That was not up to our standards. It was a lot of it was related to me not plugging all of the cables in for a microphone, which then became an issue that presented itself both with audio issues and also as a very distracting element. And even when it was sort of fixed, it was never really fixed, and it was still quite terrible. That was not the only issue, and we recognize that. We recognize that it was not fun for the viewers. So I apologize for that, and we've taken some steps, barring not muting Brooks's computer and causing an echo, to try to hopefully prevent that. And so hopefully today's show is better. I think it will be a lot more interesting and dynamic. Today's show, for those of you that are wondering, is a lame duck show, ? More on that in a second. We have 2 more shows. If you have any suggestions about what you'd like to hear us talk about next week,
Because we apparently haven't decided yet.
We've not. And I don't really, more to the point, I don't know what we're going to, it's not like we're considering between 3 options. We're going to have to make some sort of decision. Maybe I can recap the 24-hour of Le Mans. Yeah, if there's anything you think would be interesting, I mean, maybe, or would like to hear us address, or I don't know. We're not going to do like the What is PCA show again, because we did that last time, albeit with audio issues. We probably aren't going to do a show regarding the historical look back, because we did that last year, and I feel like it'd probably be a bit too much to do it again. But beyond that, open to suggestions, and if you have any, please leave a comment. Then the last show will be 2 weeks from today, and that will be us reviewing kind of like what are 10 or I guess probably more like 5 products from each of us, 10 total, that we're looking forward to that are going to launch at the trade show. Always an interesting show, and I'm sure there'll be some pretty looking cigar accessories and interesting cigars on there. All right. Brooks, what cigar are you smoking?
I am smoking a 20-acre farm from Drew Estate.
Cool. How is it?
It's good. Connecticut, good stuff.
Well, is it Connecticut seed?
Oh, it says right there on the band.
But from Florida, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, sort of Connecticut, I guess. I'm smoking a Rocky Patel San Andreas 2006. Shout out to Rocky Patel.
Thank you, Rocky Patel.
Sponsoring these videos, which is important because our coverage of the trade show is not cheap. Yeah, one of these days they're going to figure out how to spell San Andreas right, but for the moment it's misspelled on the band. All right, but one of my favorite Rockies, although I think I like the shorter size than this more than this one, but this is what was in the box. So, with that said, Brooks.
Yes.
Why are we calling this, well, I guess, what does lame duck mean?
All right, so if you're not familiar with the term lame duck, it's a political term typically, and it's used to, talk about the period of time between when a politician is either not reelected or is term limited, and they still they still have the time before the next person takes over, the next Congress, the next whoever the politician is, in order to continue to do what it is that they were elected to do. However, because there's a new person coming in, a lot of times the amount of work that they can get done and pass through is severely limited. And it's a very awkward time typically because everybody's looking forward to the new people coming in, and it's not something that they are really typically willing to work with, the people who are leaving because they're going to be gone.
I don't know how much that second part is necessarily true. Certainly not historically.
No?
No, but I mean, it is awkward because I think, to me at least, that time,
I
particularly
find
here.
it awkward.
Well, it's just it's a weird scenario because here in the U.S., where like the president and the Congress don't have the same dates where the new ones get power.
Sure.
But also more like the attention is very much on the people that are coming in, even though they haven't actually gotten the power yet, typically at least. So that's kind of what led me to use this term for this sort of topics or topics plural, but it makes more sense. And the reason why is because there's this thing that seems to happen at these trade shows where we'll be at one of these trade shows, one of the IPCPR, which is the former name of this, or PCA trade shows, and it seems like a lot of the conversation is always about the next one, or I guess last year, the one in 2024. And so I've got some examples up on the screen. Did your computer die again? We doing this bit?
Weird.
All right.
Well,
So,
no worries.
well, no, they can't see you, so you do need to get that restarted.
Well, it's restarting. Can they hear me?
Oh, I couldn't see that. Yeah, they can still hear you.
Okay. Well,
So,
weird.
yeah, it's 2 for 2. Well, the good news is we practiced for it. All right. So, while Brooks restarts his computer, yeah, you can see up on the screen some examples of the past, I guess, 5 trade shows, or 4 trade shows, and then this one, and examples of kind of like where we were looking ahead to, or what was being discussed. And some of these things obviously didn't happen, like IPCPR 2019. There was a lot of talk about PCA 2020 because they were doing the rebrand that year, and CigarCon didn't happen, and COVID caused PCA 2020 not to happen in its entirety. But I think there are a number of reasons as to why this show in particular is likely to, this trade show to be very clear, is likely to have a lot of looking ahead happening. And so the first one, or reason behind that, is that the dates are changing for next year. This is not the show for like what is PCA and those sorts of things. If you're paying attention at this point, you're probably in the cigar industry or pretty far into the weeds. And let me tell you, it's not going to get any more approachable. But for those of you that are very familiar with this trade show, that have been to this trade show, I've been going since 2010, if I'm not mistaken. And Brooks has been going since 2011. And this is the first time that, or next year will be the first time that the trade show is not taking place in either, really it's been July, but some of these shows have been late June or into early August. Next year, it's not anywhere close to that. It's going to be in March. And that is a major, major change. And I think that a lot of people are going to be talking about what that means, optimistic about it. Maybe some people are going to be pessimistic. There are certainly pros and cons, and we're going to get into them shortly about the March aspect. But in addition to that, it's not just a matter of changing the dates. This next year will mark a new venue for the trade show. Since 2008.
Well, not a new one because they've been there before,
yes, right? They have been there. Well, I mean, depending on how you want to look at it. I don't believe they've been in this specific hall they're going to be going to. Since 2019, this trade show has been at the Venetian, formerly known as the Sands Expo Center, but inside the Venetian Plaza Hotel in Las Vegas. Next year, it will be at the Las Vegas Convention Center, which is close by, but is a very, very different location. The inside of the trade show, you probably won't be able to tell much of a difference, but certainly once you walk outside, you're not going to be in a casino. So it will be very, very different. And I think we should sort of, in an effort to try to speed this up, because yesterday it took a while when we were practicing this, to talk about why these changes might be happening. So I've got sort of the 3 headers here as to how they're, or what the major reasons, as far as I can tell, as to why they might be changing. So the first would be that I think there's a pretty strong belief that moving the trade show earlier in the year could help to increase attendance, whether that's because people will have summer vacations or because people think that March is a better time to have a trade show. It's not as hot in Las Vegas, any number of things there. Secondly, something that doesn't really get talked a lot about, but for the PCA, getting out of the Venetian is going to be cheaper. Just if the option was have 2024 in the Venetian or have it in the LVCC, it's likely a lot less expensive for the PCA to do it at the LVCC. And the third would be because the PCA, this is just a 1 year. We don't know where the 2025 show is going to be. But the PCA has said that they are trying to wait to negotiate a longer-term deal. They didn't want to do a 2024, 2025, 2026 deal. They want to do something that starts in 2025, and we'll get to some reasons behind that. So, number one, attendance. I think that it's really important to start off by saying, Brooks, you don't believe these numbers are necessarily all that accurate?
I absolutely never said that. I have no idea if they're accurate or not. The idea, however, what I have, I believe that attendance.
To be clear, these numbers are from the PCA themselves.
Are we talking about declining, or are we talking about whether they're important?
No, we're talking about attendance has been declining.
Okay, yes.
Hasn't
absolutely
been doing
it's been
as well.
declining, yes.
And you can see there's no 2020 there. That's because there was no 2020 trade show. If you're wondering, these are the raw numbers themselves. And you can see that
according to PCA.
According to PCA.
Right.
I would also say this. These numbers, for the PCA, they matter a bit, but they're kind of indirectly matter. The PCA, they make their money from exhibitors, not from retailers. And so they need the retailers to be the carrot to get the exhibitors to show up. But in terms of, does the decline in retailers equate to declining PCA revenues in any meaningful way? It does not. It would be far more important to know how many, what the square footage of booth spaces they've sold are, because that really is much. I mean, that is what affects revenue for the most part when you break down their finances. So,
and I think this is where we may have a little bit of a difference of opinion, because I believe that retailers, to a point, retailers' attendance absolutely does matter. I get your point where it doesn't seem to make any difference, as you're going to go through all this stuff and prove that to be true. But I think that as in terms of a idea of this is a bigger event and this is something people want to go to, I think that the more retailers that you have there, the more likely it is that more people will show up and more people will want to go.
So would you say that the retailer attendance is indirectly important?
Perhaps not as important as it should be, but yes.
All right.
Yes.
So 3.5 minutes ago when I said it was indirectly important.
Oh, I wasn't listening to you, so I didn't hear that.
Well, there's a hallmark. Anyway, so attendance has been declining, and I think that there's a strong belief that moving it to March, what did I say earlier? Weather, time of the year to help out, it's better seasonally. We're going to get to that more in a second. Just not having to compete with summer vacation. The last few trade shows have been right around 4th of July, which I don't really think it matters all that much. For example, this year 4th of July is on a Tuesday, and the trade show starts on Saturday or Friday, depending on how you want to look at it. So, even if you take Monday and Tuesday off, July 3rd and July 4th off, and you're back at work on, let's say you take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're having a bender. By the time the trade show rolls around, I guess except for the fact that it starts on Saturday, people will be back at work. So I don't know how much that necessarily matters. It certainly could be more convenient, I would say. But
say it indirectly matters.
Thank you. Glad that we've got that. So, Brooks, what are we looking at here?
This is a picture of the trade show floor.
Nope. No, this is a map of the Venetian in their expo center.
Okay.
Not the trade show floor. That would be
this is a very large.
That would be a very large trade show compared to what we're used to.
So this is what is possible. This is the entire thing.
There may be more, but yes, this is the main room.
See, I don't know what it is because we didn't go over that in
your computer
added later.
So this is the what the Venetian Expo Center looks like. I don't think PCA or IPCPR has ever used Hall D, so in reality, this is more representative of what they have. So this is the space that they're using and have been using for, I guess, the last 4 trade shows. Hall C, which is the one up top, is, I think, the area that explains kind of the mess of the current contract. Hall A and Hall B are what the people that are going to go to this trade show are going to see as the trade show floor. Hall C used to be used partially for the trade show floor up until through 2019, but in 2021 it was used as I believe the check-in area was all in there, like very awkwardly in there. And then last year, the check-in area was back in its normal spot outside of the halls, and it was used for like the seminar area. But most importantly, there's now like a physical wall that separates Hall B and C, whereas used to be that wall was not there because there were booths extending into Hall C. This explains how much this trade show has shrunk since 2019, and I guess more importantly since 2017 when this contract was being negotiated. The PCA is paying for more space than reasonably what they need. And so for the PCA, next year's trade show should be great. I don't know what they've committed to, but I would hope that they've not committed to whatever that math number equates to, something in the neighborhood of 550,000 square feet, something like that. My hope is they've shrunk the amount of space they're committing to because, as has been discussed ad nauseum in previous shows, some major companies pulled out, but also a whole bunch of companies that had larger booths have shrunk their booths. I use Perdomo as the best example, Ashton, Miami Cigar Company, and others. And as I said in 2020, when this was sort of being discussed, no one came to take that space. I mean, there have been some limited examples of some of this being offset, but the reality is the trade show floor is a lot smaller than it was. It's not half as small. It's not as third as small, but it is smaller. And in addition to that, it also causes problems for them with hotel rooms. And I know, Brooks, you find this to be particularly fascinating. Do you want to
I do,
explain
yeah.
this
The
to them?
idea that you have to actually commit to a certain number of hotel rooms in order to get the contract that you're under. But if they don't sell those hotel rooms in that block, then they have to pay for it themselves.
Yes.
So if they are under contract for,
let's say 5,000 hotel nights.
5,000 hotel nights, not hotel rooms per night. So they have
$200,
nights, right? $200, and they only sell 4,000 of them. Then they have to pick up the tab for the other 1,000,
which would be $200,000.
I mean, that's wow.
Yeah, it's a massive
That's a
liability.
lot of money.
Yeah, it's a very large liability that you have. And the issue is when this contract that extends through 2023 at the Venetian was being negotiated, it was being done under the guise that the trade show was a certain size that included Altadis Davidoff USA General, big Perdomo booth with video screens, Ashton booth big, Miami Cigar Company booth big, and that it would grow a little bit each year. And as such, attendance would grow a little bit each year. And obviously, between the 4 companies pulling out in the prior to the 2020 trade show, the cancellation of 2020, and what COVID's done, a lot has changed. And I think it's going to be really, really helpful for the PCA to get a new contract. So I mentioned earlier that this is a one-off deal for 2024. The PCA was very explicit that their reasoning behind this is because the Las Vegas Convention Center is in the process of a major update to its older buildings, the buildings that we'll be in. There's a new space that they recently completed across the street, which is super
we don't get that one.
cool looking. No, they don't want smoke in there. Weird. And in addition to that, there's the Tampa Convention Center, which has been talked about as a potential new destination for this trade show. They're also in the process of completing apparently a $38 million renovation, which I guess will make it easier to have this trade show in Tampa. And so the PCA's position, which I think is extremely sound, is we're going to have one show in 2024, and then we're going to try to negotiate a contract for 2025, 2026, etc., and we're going to try to have more spaces with availability to compete against one another. So now we're going to sort of, well, I guess it's already on the screen via emojis. Man, you are looking very Asian in the emojis there. Yeah, so Brooks, do
Yes.
you like the date changing from your perspective, like how it affects you from if it was, say, July 7th through 10th, 2024 compared to March 22nd, 20?
No,
or 25th?
it's a personal. Obviously, we're talking about personal things. Just me, personally, I don't like it, and the reason are pretty simple for me. Number one, about a month before, maybe 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, I have to go to Cuba to cover the Habanos Festival, and it's
a
going to
real cross you have to bear.
It's going to be. It's not. it's fun. But listen, it's a lot of work, and it's traveling and all that, and it's the idea that you have that, and then come and do all the work that we do for PCA is going to be a lot. But also as a person, in a personal manner, my birthday is on the 25th of March, and I prefer not to spend my birthday in Vegas unless.
Well, you're probably not going.
I'm getting drunk.
My guess is you're going to be on a flight home.
I'd prefer not to be. I'd prefer not to spend it on a flight home either.
And spend it with American Airlines.
So as a personal matter, no, I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm also not a fan. Similar story with Brooks. Q1
your birthday too?
Earlier in March, but Q1 and a couple decades away. Just want to point that out. Q1 of each year is very, very busy for Half Wheel. We obviously have the awards week at the sort of mid to late January, which is probably our second largest project in terms of the amount of resources, time-wise, we have to spend at it. And then that kicks off festival season. So there's Pure Sabor usually takes place like the same day as the Consensus, typically. In January, that's the Nicaraguan Cigar Festival, which Patrick covered this year. Then typically I'm in the Dominican Republic in February for Pro Cigar, which is another cigar festival. Excuse me. And then, as Brooks mentioned, the Habanos Festival typically is the week after Pro Cigar. Brooks typically does that. It's a lot of traveling, and it's a lot of traveling at a time in which we're, writing stories about new PCA launches and emailing companies and things like that. So just from a personal perspective, it's going to be a very, very busy Q1. Yikes. Retailers. Brooks, I guess I'll start this one off. I think that the retailers will I think the retailers will generally enjoy having it earlier. I think that they will benefit both the retailers and the manufacturers. The hope here is that if you have the trade show right now in July, you probably aren't selling cigars to be like that are going to ship in December to these retailers. That's typically how this goes. We do see examples of products that people will have on display at the trade show that'll be like, oh, this is a holiday release, or we're working on this, but we don't have it ready, and it'll ship. Like J.C. Newman, for example, with Angel Cuesta, was on display last year at PCA in July of 2022, didn't start shipping until a month or so ago, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So that's an example of these products, but I don't think J.C. Newman was taking orders. In fact, I know they weren't because they hadn't figured out the pricing of one of the sizes.
That would be helpful.
So for the most part, you're taking orders at like maybe a 90 to 120-day window. You're going to fill up as much as you want as you can with the hopes of getting it shipped within the next 120 days. That means in July, you're talking about the second half of July, August, September, and maybe October. August is cool, but not as good as you would want. June, not as good from a retail selling months as June and July typically are, from what I understand. And it trails off, particularly as the weather cools down and it starts to get cold for the retailers that are in climates that get cold. You flip that and say if your trade show is in late March, you get a little bit of March. And then you have April, which is when cigar sales kind of start to come alive again. Then you get May, you get June, which has Father's Day, and then you're kicking right into the summer season as the climate gets warm and cigar sales pick up. So I think the hope from both retailers and manufacturers is that having this show in March will help because you'll get access to better sales cycles as opposed to having it in July, where you're starting to push them into when sales start to seasonally trail off. Now, Brooks, why is it so important to focus on the sales for both the retailers and the manufacturers? Like, are they just buying cigars every week or 2 weeks to refill their shelves?
No, I can't imagine that they are. They're
well, what are they doing at the trade show that's so different?
I mean, they're buying stuff ahead of time, right? They're buying stuff to
deals.
Put
What deals? What
deals. Deals is what they're doing. Yeah, I was actually going to go back before you actually interrupted. I was actually going to go back and say, listen, for retailers, it's also, probably pretty. I'm not a retailer, and I never will be.
Yikes.
That would be a very bad decision on somebody's part.
You could be a Pokemon card retailer.
Probably a bad decision on that one as well.
Definitely
However,
wouldn't be paying taxes.
The retailer, I would imagine for retailers, it's probably a good idea. It's a better idea for March because, sales are probably, they don't have to be in the store perhaps as much. The summer is a big time to buy cigars, and maybe they need to be there if they're a smaller business. Also, it's kind of nice to have, if you, as a guy with a kid, it's nice to have family time in the summer where you don't have to go on, to work and all that other. I'm going to have summer next year, which will be nice.
Yeah, but I mean, in fairness,
so for me, I would think that would be
a
minor, a minor thing that they would appreciate.
Yeah, but they're not like having to prepare for PCA like we do.
Well, obviously,
yeah,
not.
Yeah. So they could travel the week before PCA, is my point, in a way that we cannot.
They don't want to.
Yes, but what I was trying to set you up for was
Please.
The idea that they buy a lot of cigars at the trade show. So buying a lot of cigars in March versus buying a lot of cigars in July is advantageous.
I agree with you 100%.
Do you want to explain how that works?
No.
Okay. So at these trade shows, typically the way this has worked is that the manufacturers will offer some of their best discounts, if not their best discount of the year during the PCA trade show, with the idea of trying to increase the volume and giving retailers another carrot to come to Las Vegas. And for the retailers, and we know a lot of retailers that do this, where they try to buy as many cigars as they can at trade shows because it's just better margin for them. If they're paying 20% off for a cigar that they otherwise normally have to buy at just the regular wholesale price, it's a whole bunch of profit that they can get access to that they otherwise don't. All right, Brooks.
Yes.
You think that this will be something that'll, from your thoughts are the PCA is going to like this date change, moving it earlier. You've got a thumbs up here. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, for me, it would seem that one of the ideas behind the PCA doing this is what they've said is that they think more retailers will come. And so if that's the case, then it will be a positive for the PCA. And I think that's really the bottom line in terms of my thumbs up there.
Yeah, and for me, I think that it's...
Do you not agree with that?
I was on
you've got a thumbs down on that one.
Yeah, so I was on the fence about this and ended up taking the thumbs down approach.
The contrary.
Well, just to be able to provide the other perspective here. I do wonder what happens if this doesn't fix attendance. Like if attendance is up 7% next year compared to this year, to me that means this didn't work. And I really wonder about like if there are a lot of different variables going on here that are going to make it tough to judge how successful this date change is. I've kind of looked at this as like this is the last card in this deck that can get played here to make a difference. I think that the next set of changes that would be tried would require substantial changes to the structure of the trade show and the format and those sorts of things in a way that this one doesn't. The one like minor other change that could happen, although the PCA says that they have surveyed retailers and that the retailers prefer starting this trade show Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, as opposed to having it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think that's another change that they could try without completely blowing up the format. But this one, I think, is the more impactful of the two suggestions. And once again, the PCA says that they've surveyed people and that they don't want to change. There's also some downside for the exhibitors because it would probably increase their setup cost due to overtime. Okay. Moving on. Similarly, Brooks, how do you think what's your thoughts about moving this thing to the LVCC?
Yeah, well, for me, and again, a personal thing, I just, it's going to be really, really annoying to not be able to, it takes a long time to get to your room, right? In anywhere in Vegas, it's not a short distance, no matter where you are, from the hotel room in the Venetian down to the convention center. It's not a short distance, but it's a lot longer if we're staying at the Venetian to go to the LVCC. You had to get a cab. You got to get out. Well, you don't have to, but we do. It's going to be annoying. It's going to be something that you can't go back to your room very easily if you need something. It's definitely not as convenient for me, and I assume for you.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. We both have thumbs down for the retailers. I'm guessing in your my thought here is that
I have it's the same as that, right? I mean, they don't have as much convenience, but so I'm assuming you have another reason.
Yeah, my thought there is more that I think a lot of the retailers enjoy the social aspect of all being kind of in one place in a way that and also I think the retailers probably have more diverse more of them don't stay at the Venetian percentage-wise than the manufacturers and some other people. So I think for them, they'll be the least like there's a group of people that won't be affected at all by this because they don't stay at the Venetian and this doesn't really matter. And then there will be the group of people who stay at the Venetian who will have very similar thoughts to you and I about this is an added annoyance plus less time at a centralized bar. You and I differ on the manufacturers. My thought here is that I think the manufacturers, I was on the fence again, but took the contrarian approach to make this more interesting. I think that your thoughts, I'm guessing, on the manufacturers are pretty similar about, like, they're just going to be annoyed by not being in one place.
Yeah,
and
I mean, a lot of the same annoyance, sure.
Yeah, my thought is that some of the manufacturers will enjoy probably spending less money to exhibit at the LVCC. It should be cheaper from what I understand. Obviously, we'll see if that actually plays out, but there is some positive there that I think is a little bit different than the retailers. You and I are both big thumbs up.
Well, sorry. What about construction? Is that part of the?
Yeah, it's going to be a variable. We don't really know.
How annoying is that? People working as we're trying to walk around and.
Well, I don't think it'll be
noise, dust.
Yeah, we don't know, and I don't think the LVCC really knows because obviously they can tell us what they think will be happening in March of next year. But that is a long time away, and if you've ever had a construction project of any size, running on time is usually not one of those things. I can only imagine what it's like when you're doing massive construction on a building that is also still in use. Yeah. So who knows? But it is something that's a smart point on your behalf there to point out that could be an issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kind of you.
All right, and you and I are both thumbs up on the PCA. I think for the reasons I kind of explained earlier with it's just a better deal for them to not be at the Venetian, much less liability financially. Probably can be a more profitable show.
But these are all things we're assuming.
Yeah, look, they're going to take to, somebody, Mitch Smith, sorry, I'm going to big time you again, Tyler. Mitch Smith pointed out, like, someone's always going to find something to complain about. So they're going to hear a lot of complaints about
I don't complain about much.
Well, they're going to hear a lot of complaints from people about how it's not at the Venetian, how they missed the Venetian and blah, 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 blah. But from the PCA's like financial outlook, like moving to the LVCC should be a win there. All right. So moving on to the next sort of reasons as to why I think that the lame duck status might really be here. We have three of the 4 or 5 largest companies in the cigar industry mentioned there. SCG, for those of you that are wondering, is the parent company of General Cigar Companies. So that's like CAO, Macanudo, Dominican or non-Cuban Cohiba. And then they also own Forge, which is a separate sales division. So it's one company, but they have 2 different sales forces, and they just divide the brands up. Forged includes the Alec Bradley portfolio that SCG recently purchased, as well as brands like Room 101, Diesel, Chillin' Moose.
Chillin' Moose.
Yep, Chillin' Moose is in there, and others. In 2020, I've referenced this a bunch. 4 companies announced they would not be attending or exhibiting at the 2020 trade show that was ultimately canceled. Those 4 companies were the 3 you saw on screen, plus Davidoff. 4 of the largest exhibitors, 4 of the largest cigar companies. They had issues with both the trade show as well as the organization itself. You can read more about it. There's, I think there's an article that's like 8,000 words about this that I wrote. Anyway, we're not going to rehash that today. But I reported a couple months ago, I guess at this point, or a little more than a month ago, that 3 of those companies are eyeing coming back in exhibiting at PCA 2024. Now, Brooks, do you want to run down? We did this last week, but just for the audience here, 3 of the companies will be there in differing amounts this year. So do you want to go down that road?
Right. So, STG, on the STG side, the Foraged is going to be there, as you mentioned. STG, as a general, is not going to have a booth there. And that's an interesting thing because, to me...
Not yet. Okay.
Okay, all right. I got you. All right. So, Drew Estate not going to be there as a taking product. They are going to be. They're going to have people in the booth for Joya de Nicaragua to help out that company because Joya de Nicaragua is distributed by Drew Estate
here in the U.S.
And so they're going to have people there helping out Joya de Nicaragua, but Drew Estate says they're not going to be taking any orders for Drew Estate products. In terms of Altadis, I don't have any. I forgot what's going on with them. Can you fill me in
Yeah,
on that?
they were the ones that came in April and bought a booth.
Oh, that's right.
3 booths, actually.
Yes.
So,
and so,
good.
no, you.
Yeah, they have 3 smaller booths, similar in size to their TPE setup, which is very different than the setup they had at, say, IPCPR 2019 when they had a car in part of their booth.
Correct.
Those 3 companies, I would say, are haphazardly participating in the 2023 trade show. And the reason why I use the term haphazardly is because I don't think that they had necessarily planned on doing so a year out. And that's normally how these cycles are. The PCA typically, I don't know what they're doing this year, but typically they will ask you to reserve your booth for next year's trade show at the current trade show. Even more reason why it's a lame duck show. So Altadis, they signed up in April. Jurastate never signed up, though. I imagine that Hoya was considering it last summer, from what I understand. And STG, I don't think they really intended on being back for this year. Now, the reasons as to why we're bringing this up is that I think that there's a chance that if attendance is the same as last year, I think a lot of people are going to be like, well, wait till next year when Jurastate's back. And by the way, none of these companies have confirmed their participation in the trade show next year.
Right, but and this was an interesting thing that I was wondering, and maybe you can help me out with this. The idea that these companies have a foothold now in the show this year. So Jurastate, for example.
Jurastate's probably the one that I would argue doesn't. But
Jurastate does not as much, if you would let me finish. However, STG, they have Forge there, and there's certainly an idea in my mind that, okay, does this mean that STG, that General, will actually be coming back next year because they have committed to Forge being there? Or is
your question is
does the fact that Forge is there this year, and I'm aware that they'd already purchased that, right? But
Alec Bradley.
Alec Bradley, the booth that they had purchased was originally for Alec Bradley, which the company they purchased and decided to use that. But do you think this means that General has more of a chance of coming back because we're already here now. We Forge did okay, whatever. Is it possible that what are your thoughts on that becoming more of an issue, the fact that they may come back? That was really awkward.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I know what I'm supposed to say here. I don't really know what you asked. I don't know. I mean, look, I think with all these companies, like if they sell 5 times the amount of product that they expect to sell, like, yeah, I'm sure they'll sign up and be like, of course we're going to do this again. And if they sell 0 cigars, and by the way, there are companies that go to this trade show and sell nothing. I know of one that did it last year.
Nothing.
Not these size companies, but there are smaller companies that go to the trade show and don't sell a single thing.
And that shocks me, honestly. Are they coming back?
Yeah, I think that company's coming back. I think if you spent a couple days in a trade show booth and just hung out with them and kind of shadowed them, I think you'd see like some of the, like, if you're a smaller company that most people haven't heard of, like it's got to be super awkward at these shows. But anyway, what I'm supposed to say here is that if I'm asked to decide, which I was not by Brooks, but I was supposed to be asked by Brooks to decide what's the most likely scenario. If you tell me that STG is going to be at PCA 2024, which they have not confirmed, does that mean that General is there? Does that mean that Forged is there? Or is it option C and both are there? I would say the most likely scenario in my mind, and we're assuming that option D is not, no one from STG is there. The most likely scenario is actually none of those 4. It's that STG bought another company and they had a booth committed to, and that's why STG is at the trade show. Putting that aside, I would say the most likely thing in my mind is that General goes to PCA, Forge goes to TPE, which is another cigar-related trade show that takes place 60 days before PCA in Las Vegas at the LVCC. So you send Forge to TPE in January, General to PCA, and that way you can spread out your product launches and you aren't sort of tripping over one another. I could see any of the 3 scenarios, or 5 scenarios, I guess. I could see just Forge, just General, both of them there, no one there, General buys somebody, or SCG buys somebody else, and that's their booth. Any of those seem on the table.
But if you were to,
but if I were to bet, the most likely scenario is I would say General at PCA, no Forged, or General is there and maybe there's some Forged representatives, but there's they're like hanging out in the booth essentially.
Let's keep this going then. What about Drew Estate? The idea that Drew Estate has reps in the Hoya booth, and they say they're not taking any.
As
they're
someone
not taking
that
any
watched
product.
Drew Estate's live show, which I think may have been recorded and then like published live, the production value was super high. But it occurred to me that
Probably better than this.
It occurred to me, that it may have been pre-taped. They were hinting that it sounds like they're going to be back at the trade show next year.
Really?
Yeah, there was some hints it wasn't like, oh, pay attention for a big announcement regarding a March 2024 trade show. It wasn't that much, but it was like, well, we're not there this year, but Hoya is. And and there was a lot of conversation about PCA for a company that is not going to PCA. I would say there was a lot of talk about the trade show.
And I want to get your thoughts really quick because I know we're running a little late here. But Mitch mentioned the idea that, excuse me, does this mean that, if they're coming back?
I was going to do this at the end.
Okay, well then never mind. Hey, let's move on.
All right, so that does leave a question though, like what about Davidoff? I don't think Davidoff will be there. I asked Davidoff, they declined to comment about, when I was writing that article that you just saw on the screen. Sorry, this one. I asked them, Davidoff declined to comment. I think that's all you need to know. These three companies have, it wasn't just that I had conversations with them. They have talked about this with other people. Davidoff, from what I understand, has had that conversation with other people and has told those people when having those conversations that is not as part of their plans. Obviously, anything could happen between now and March of next year, but I would be surprised. Oh, look, I need a software update. This is just some high-quality broadcasting here.
I'm enjoying it. Dark mode. What's a dark mode?
I don't know, and now my camera is not working.
I'm old. You have to explain things to me.
All right. Rick, you got to talk about it.
I do?
Yeah,
okay.
My camera's off.
So, according to the sheet on the thingamajigger here, cigar sales are declining. This is a very, Charlie published an article just recently about the idea that the cigar sales are declining, and it's not a huge drop yet, but it certainly is a situation where you can tell that it is, going in a downward way. Now, look, after the pandemic and the huge number of sales that all of these cigar companies had, or at least most of them, even if it's the cigar sales are declining, it's still a higher rate than it was the sales were back in 2018, 2019. So even though they're declining, it's still, you have to take into account the idea that they're still much higher than they were in the time before the pandemic started. And I think that's an interesting point that Charlie can probably expand on at some point soon.
Yeah, I don't know. My camera's still not working. Do you want to talk about the CI email?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I can.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can do it.
Yeah, so
if you want to.
I wouldn't take whatever Brooks said as face value. It may have not been true. So I got this email this morning from CI. I'm sure some of you did as well. They got a million people on their email list. This is the second time in the last month that I've gotten an email from CI with a promotion. There was a previous one about a month ago that was a 25% off site-wide deal. CI is the largest retailer. They are owned by SCG, the same company that owns General and Forge. They're the largest retailer. It's not close. They're a good bellwether about what's happening in the cigar industry. They don't normally offer these types of discounts. They're becoming more and more frequent. And that says to me that at the very least CI is struggling, and I've heard from others that their sales are not what they were a year ago. And they're not alone. JR Cigar, which is their largest competitor, it offers pretty aggressive deals on a daily basis, or not daily, but on a weekly basis in a way that was not happening 3 or 4 years ago. Famous Smoke Shop, I'm sure it's a similar story over there. They're all competing for your business, and it seems like that's gotten a lot tougher. What Brooks was getting at earlier is that the Cigar Association of America publishes this data about cigar imports, not necessarily cigar sales. And so if you think that like the CI, like if you're like, oh, I don't really believe these guys that CI offering promos is an indication that sales are slowing down, and I don't believe them when they tell me that they've talked to cigar companies and retailers and they tell them that sales are slowing down. We have seen imports, at least in comparison to 2022, Q1 was noticeably down, and you can see that on the screen there. Now, it's really important to acknowledge, I don't know when I was trying to fix cameras, if you were talking about this, that in the historical context, sales are still way up.
I did mention that.
Great. So, or imports are way up, sorry, not sales. But presumably sales are too. And anecdotally, we've been told that sales have been pretty good since more or less the start of lockdown up in, through 2022. If you were struggling to sell cigars, you probably shouldn't be in the cigar business. And you can see here on this chart that, like, yes, it's declined. And this is just comparing Q1s of these respective years. But it's not as, like, it's declining, but it's still way above where it was in 2019. And quite frankly, it can keep declining at gradual rates, and it's going to take a while before we were back in the 2019 levels. Yes?
Now, you mentioned something that I thought was fascinating, and I wanted to get your...
A show without any technical difficulties?
No, that's impossible, obviously. The idea that the... Well, I thought it was fascinating, and now I forgot what I was going to say.
All right. Just interrupt me mid-sentence.
I will do that, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that this is an important thing to talk about because
That fascinating.
Of two reasons. Number one, I don't think that this is unrelated to what we were just talking about with those three companies coming back. I get the sense that those companies who have, JR Cigars owned by the same company that owns Altadis. U.S.A does not own a cigar retailer, but certainly does a lot of business with those big retailers. And STG, as I mentioned, owns CI. I think those companies see this data. They have access to more data than we do and more data than HVC or Fratello or quite frankly, even, maybe not U.S.A in this regard, but like STG has more data than Rocky Patel does when it comes to how cigar sales are in the U.S. Rocky Patel's a massive company with a huge sales force, but STG, through both its retail channels, and Rocky's got the Burns, and also through General and Forged, they can just see what's happening in the cigar market in a way that they're peerless in that regard. I think they're seeing the numbers and going, we need to spend some money to hopefully capture back some of those sales. Secondly, I think that this is only going to further the lame duck status because I do think that a lot of companies are going to look at if they have a flat year or likely a down year at sales at the trade show and compared to PCA 2022, I think they're just going to be like, oh, well, don't worry because in March of next year when there's double the amount of retailers with no evidence of that happening, everything will be fine and like we'll be back to having great trade shows. And I think that is going to be the just, go-to explanation of when we all do it, right? You go up to a booth and go, hey, Brooks, you having a good show? Like, sales up, sales good, and the response is...
The
response is...
No. Yes, absolutely.
Best
having
show
a great
ever.
show.
Best show ever. That is the response. And so I think that after a little poking and prodding, when you're like, best show ever, there is one retailer in your booth right now. Like, do I just miss all the retailers? And
it's
then
been
like,
a little slow, but we had a big rush.
Big day one.
Yeah.
But then it's going to eventually get to, but we're hearing like a lot of retailers skipped this show because they heard next year's shows in March. They don't want to deal with the heat and 4th of July and whatever. And everything will be fixed next year with March. And so I think that those are all part of these reasons as to why I think that there's a real chance this show becomes a lame duck show. But I do think it's a super important show because I think this moment about, like, are we going to go back to 2019, not in terms of what you see on the screen with, like, the actual import numbers, but are we going to get back to a point where retailers have way, way too much inventory like they did in 2019? That's a real question because I remember talking to a bunch of cigar companies in December of 19, and no one had anything positive to say about the state of their business. At least outside of the small companies where they're less established and they have easier growth patterns. But the big established companies at the end of 19 were all talking about how Q4 was really bad and 19 overall was not good.
And that was what I was going to say before I forgot.
I told you.
I'm old.
Yep.
The idea that you are, you've mentioned many times to me, and I'm pretty sure in articles that there was a reckoning coming in 2019 before the pandemic happened, and the pandemic just basically, blew that out of the water.
Should have seen COVID coming.
But before that happened, it would have been really, really bad.
Yeah,
is your opinion?
Yeah, retailers were stocked up, whether brick and mortar or otherwise. They were stocked up on a lot of inventory, and manufacturers were backloaded on inventory too. It was not a good spot in terms of inventory management. There just wasn't. The cigar industry has never really had a great realization that, STG says it. STG is a publicly traded company, so they have to put out quarterly reports, and they mention it in their premium cigar category that their estimation, based off their immense data and people with financial degrees, is that the cigar market, handmade cigar market, is generally speaking going to decline up to 1% a year. They acknowledge that COVID completely changed that equation temporarily, but their opinion now is it's back into that trend where you should expect a 1% decline. Now, I think that may not play out this year just because of the recent trends of how increased it was post-lockdown COVID. But, their estimation is that, the market shrinks a little bit every year. It's mostly flat, but it a little shrinkage. All right. And with that, let's talk about some new cigars, Brooks.
Yes, let's.
All right, I think you're up first on this.
I am. So, first cigar we're going to talk about is the Epic Cigars, a Bronx Tale. Now, this is made in collaboration with Chaz Palminteri. Now, he's an actor, nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in the film Bullets Over Broadway. Also starred alongside Robert
There's
De Niro
no way you pronounced that correctly.
in A Bronx Tale.
Palminteri?
Palminteri.
Yeah, the first time I felt like you added an extra vowel in between the L and the M.
It's possible.
Okay.
And now you knocked me off.
Did you like A Bronx Tale? The movie?
I never saw The Bronx Tale, to be honest with
Play?
you. No.
What was the other movie that he got nominated for an Academy Award, right?
That's right. It says he was nominated for an Academy Award.
For
Bullets Over Broadway.
Did you like that?
I never saw it. I'm really more of a science fiction, fantasy kind of guy. Regardless, interestingly enough, the Bronx Tale was actually Robert De Niro's first time he directed a movie, which I did not know. So, anyway, this is a 6x54 box press Toro, priced at $20 each. And it's actually launching at an event on June 28th. But Epic Cigars will probably have them at the show.
Definitely have them at the show.
Interesting point, however, is the fact that Chaz will be at the booth, the Epic booth, the first 2 days. So if you want a picture, buddy, you need to get there the first 2 days.
All right.
Or you, I guess.
Yeah.
Y'all.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Not big A Bronx Tale film fans over here, apparently, so maybe not for us. All right, next up, Le Pâtissier number 2. So this is the third consecutive year that there's a new Le Pâtissier at the PCA Convention and Trade Show. The 2021 show is when they introduced Le Pâtissier for the first time. At that point, it was a single-size PCA exclusive, so retailers had to place their orders at PCA, otherwise they couldn't get it. Lonsdale size came with a brown band. Last year, they announced that they would make it a regular production line, and interestingly enough, dropped the Lonsdale, said that they felt like the smaller ring gauge caused burn issues, which is something I found in my review, and added 4 sizes as regular production items. And this year, they're going to add a 5th size as a PCA exclusive, but not a limited edition. So it's not like 1,000 boxes only. My understanding is if you're a retailer, you place the order in Vegas in person in Vegas at the trade show, and you get Le Pâtissier number 2, which is a 6 1/8 by 52. It's like Crown Heads does a lot of times. It's the same size as the Cuban size, the Monte Cristo number 2, H. Upmann number 2. But you can keep ordering it, so going forward. And one other note, it comes in a different colored box. The normal Le Pâtissiers are in a lighter, like cream colored box. This one, obviously black, not cream colored.
Now, for edification, the first release was a PCA exclusive, correct?
Yes.
The second release, the regular production, was not.
No.
And the third release, this new one, is a PCA exclusive.
Correct, but not a limited
edition. Confusing. All right. So the third cigar we're talking about is the Atabey Diosis. 10-year extra age. Now, this is the same cigar as the company's existing Atabey Diosis. It's the same 8x50.
I'm going to be honest. That's the picture they sent out with the press release. I don't think that's the 10-year aged. That just looks like the regular one.
They look exactly the same, apparently. The only
but there's a
difference
secondary band or a tertiary band?
Only difference is they put a sticker on the inside of the box, which apparently there is not one there.
I mean, there could be underneath the cigars.
Could be. Or maybe on the...
All right, keep going. Sorry. Just never occurred to me
just,
that that's the same looking thing.
So this is the same. It's the same cigar, right? Same 8x50 cigar, same blend, and unbelievably, almost the same $36 price point.
Unbelievable that's $36, or unbelievable they didn't
Unbelievable that they kept the same price point. However, this specific version has been aged for a total of 10 years instead of 5 for the original version. And you can read all about the interesting way that they age cigars on one of our many reviews of their cigars. It's very interesting. I find it fascinating. And it's definitely a very, in the #1 cigar of the year that we had last year, that they use the same aging process, it's definitely a flavorful cigar. So whether that's because of the aging or whatever, I don't know, but it's very fascinating. Anyway. The first release will be only 99,250 cigars sold in boxes of 25. So except for the size, I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Next up is the Oliva Serie V Milanio Edition Año 2023. This combines a couple of different things. So this is what the cigar looks like, the Edition Año 2023. It's a 5.5 by 54 Figurado size, which they call Figurino. If that sounds familiar, or if you have one of these at home, it's because you bought a $21,000, or if you were in Europe, 21,000 euro humidor. In 2021, Oliva announced that they were working with LE Blue to produce these beautiful, I think that's the olive wood that LE Blue uses, where
it's gorgeous.
The interior can have the same like finish as the exterior. This one, obviously, they put some different finish on the exterior, but the wood grain can be the same. And they only do that with olive wood, from what I understand. And so the theme was 21. So there was 21 humidors priced at $21,000/euros, and then they included 21 of these Oliva Figurinos, which they said were based on the Serie V Milanio blend. And that would have been the big selling point for me to buy this humidor. We did not. It was slightly out of budget, but we thought about it. Now they're going to make like 140,000 more of them. So if you bought the humidor, you do have
140,000 more humidors?
No, cigars.
Oh.
But you do have, your cigars have special bands on them, which are interesting. You can see they're different than these. And this also combines another series that Brian Shapiro, who handles international sales for Oliva, has been spearheading for more than a decade at this point, where each year international non-U.S. accounts have been able to get a limited edition special size of an Oliva. Typically, it's been either Serie V or Serie V Milanio. There was a cane, if I'm not mistaken, one year. And so you've seen things like 9x52 Serie Vs, diademas.
Nubs.
That, I think one year was a nub recently. They've had, since like 2017, it's generally been Milanios, and the other trademark here of this sort of limited European or international series has been that they've used round Milanios as opposed to box pressed. The regular Milanios are all box pressed. Although Oliva has started to offer the round Milanios a lot more to U.S. accounts. These will be offered to both U.S. and international stores, shipping in September.
Now, does that go back to that? Does the top of the lid come off?
I was just going to move on and not do the Master Blends 1 conversation, but yeah, I mean, it will eventually come off.
These things.
Because
the Master Blend 1, we have a box here somewhere. The Master Blend 1 had a removable top box that you could actually hang and had art on it. You could actually hang it on your wall. You could take that off and do that, I guess, with that if you wanted to.
Yeah, but I don't think as gracefully as it was with the Master Blend 1.
With that attitude.
And the Master Blend 1 came with like a pre-drilled, not a hook, but a hole to hang it.
All right, number 4, I think, maybe, is the black label trading company La Madonna Negra. Now, that translates to the Black Madonna from Spanish. This is being released to commemorate the company's 10th anniversary in business. 3 different sizes, all of which are box pressed. Each size is limited to 900 boxes. However, there is a option for 50 collection boxes that will have a mix of 32 cigars. We don't know how many of each, because obviously the math doesn't really add up if you have all 3. So we don't know how many of each, but there are 32 cigars of the 3 Vitolas and some mix of some sort that will be shipping to retailers next week. And they had a thingamajigger, did they?
They did have a thingamajigger. They last night on their Instagram account announced which stores are getting the collectors boxes.
Yeah, they had a lottery of some sort. So
Yeah. So, but you'll see those in stores next week. Next up is the Oscar Connecticut, and this was one of 3 new Oscar lines that were announced, or cigars, I guess. I forget if one of them is an extension or if they're all 3 lines. But Patrick Reed wrote 2 stories on Half Wheel earlier this week. You can read them for more details about what's new from Oscar Valladares. There are at least 3 sort of categories of things. This is one of them. This stood out to me because I recently reviewed the Oscar Heaven and Hell, or the Heaven and Hell Claro, which uses Connecticut seed wrapper grown in Honduras, and that is also what's on this cigar, Connecticut seed wrapper grown in Honduras. Now, I know some of you that are maybe less familiar with Oscar Valladares may be looking at that going, there's clearly green tobacco on there. And so with the Oscar line, the other Oscar blends, they've done this before where they've wrapped the lower 2/3 of the cigar with a different type of tobacco, sort of like as an alternative to cellophane, essentially. You can smoke it, I guess, if you wanted to with that on there, but it's not designed for that from what I gather. And so the idea is you would take that Candela tobacco off and then light up your Connecticut cigar. Really love the blue color. Reminds me of my old car.
What kind of car was it?
The Audi.
Oh.
It's a little bit lighter, but...
I forgot you're not that old, so you've only had like 2 cars in your life.
4.
All right, so moving on. We have the Joya de Nicaragua, Numero Uno Deluxe Humidor Limited Edition. That's a long name. Now, this is a humidor that contains 2 different vitolas in the Numero Uno
You going to try pronouncing them?
line. Yeah, sure. I mean, I like being made fun of as much as the next guy.
Drink.
The first one is the Numero Uno La Ambassadora. And the second one is the Le Premier, which I think is probably close enough. The first one was the #1 cigar of the year for us in 2018 when it was released. That was the original version of that was actually given out as diplomatic gifts to the Nicaraguan government by Joya de Nicaragua. They loved it so much, we loved it so much, that they decided to make it a more, a bigger release and actually made different branding and that kind of thing. But both of these cigars are not new. Both of them are actually available outside of this humidor in limited productions.
What's the
25 count
price
boxes.
of this humidor? Not cheap, I'm guessing.
I'm sorry?
What's the price of the humidor?
Well, I was getting to that. The price of each
I was trying to get you to
humidor
continue quicker.
Good luck. The price of the humidor is $2,850. They're limited to 400 units. That's a lot of money for a humidor, but it looks gorgeous.
Well, it's 150 cigars, though.
What's that?
It
And
comes
they're
with
really
150
really good. I love them.
Yeah.
The humidor looks actually very familiar to me. You said we had one that looked just like it.
Yeah,
or
I'm
is
pretty
just like
sure
it.
this is the Ensolo. This humidor was designed or made by Ensolo Designs. Drew Estate we gave away some last year of their 25th anniversary humidors that don't look exactly the same, but I'm guessing are the same humidor with a different paint job and some other minor accent changes. JR Cigar also used the same humidor for their 50th anniversary, which they sent us one, the purple humidor that's over there.
Right.
But
Does
yeah,
it work?
Yeah, it works pretty well.
I like the color.
I've never reviewed those humidors, but yeah, they seem like they work well. They're really nice humidors for like the Chinese made. I'm guessing that if the humidors were standalone items, it'd be less than $500. So, yeah. All right. Now that we're an hour into the show, I hope you guys are prepared for the next 4 hours because I'm going to talk about my favorite sporting event of the year. It is the 24-hour of Le Mans.
I'm going to take a nap.
It is a car race that takes place in Le Mans, France this weekend. Starts Saturday afternoon, local time. So here in the States, early in the morning, not super early, but like 8 o'clock, I think, roughly in Dallas. And it, as the name would imply, runs for 24 hours. And it's an endurance car race. This is the 100th anniversary of the first running of Le Mans. It is the 91st running of the 24-hour. It is one of the most, if not the most prestigious car race in the world. Certainly within sports car and endurance racing, it is absolutely the most prestigious. And St. Dupont, another French institution that is celebrating its 170th anniversary, I don't know. 1834, I feel like, is when DuPont. Anyway, they're celebrating a major anniversary as well, and they're a French company. The two of them have decided to team up, so St. Dupont has got a deal with the ACO, which is the organizers of the 24-hour of Le Mans, and has come up with various collections. What you see on the screen is sort of the lower to mid-tier end of things. So that's a Line 2 lighter and a Line D pen, if I'm not mistaken. This side of the collection is offered in 3 different color schemes. If you're like, that looks familiar, they are all racing color schemes with tied into iconic racing cars. So the one on the left was made famous. That's the Gulf Racing scheme. And
I can't see the pictures.
have the pictures not been on the screen for the entire time?
Now you can see them.
Shit. Yeah, that was great. Okay, so we'll just restart this and just do Le Mans. And yeah, so the one on the left there is blue and orange. That is the Gulf Racing scheme. The one on the right is a pretty classic Ferrari scheme. This one you're seeing now for the first time is the Martini Racing scheme, made famous by Porsche at Le Mans and then Lancia in rally racing. And they don't have licensing deals with any of the car companies, so it's not going to have like a Ferrari logo, if that's what you're wondering. There is also an even more expensive collection, which you can see on the screen there. If you want the car, there's 3 different ways to get it. You can get the car and the lighter, and that is an ST DuPont Legrand lighter, so the dual soft flame torch lighter. And that's around $6,000. If you like the pen, which kind of looks like the Le Mans trophy, that's what it's supposed to look like, that they give out to the winners, and second and third place in each class as well. That looks...
Everybody gets a trophy.
Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And that looks like... They also get watches, too. The
Same
trophy...
color scheme?
No. This color scheme is... I don't know why that's this color scheme. It doesn't... To my knowledge, it doesn't really have anything to do with Le Mans. And the 8 is a reference to the lucky number 8, very considered to be lucky in Chinese culture. So the pen in the car, $6,000 roughly. And if you'd like everything you see on the screen, you can get that for around $11,000.
Does that car move? Can you like?
I don't know.
Or something?
I have no idea. I mean, I'm...
Go back one. That branding looks like the Speed Racer number to me.
And thank you for contributing to the auto racing conversation.
You're welcome.
So
That's all I've got.
there's actually an even more expensive collection that's like $40,000.
Different number,
but
obviously.
they haven't
Speed Racer
confirmed them.
was not the 8, but it's okay. So the last one that I have, anyway, is Tailgate by Karen Berger. Now, this is a very different look for Karen Berger, who for their company in terms of branding, and this is going to be a box of cigars that is made to look like a classic truck, according to the company, and it's actually going to have a tailgate portion that will actually come down, I guess, and then you reach in and grab the cigars from there. So it's a very branded. I don't have a picture of the box. I haven't seen the box. This is just...
Well, don't worry. We're not into showing people pictures, apparently.
And even if we had one, we wouldn't show it to you, so don't worry about it. Anyway, it's a 6x52 Toro, and $7.75 for that price. It is a round cigar, and it comes in 14-count boxes. It actually ships before the show starts on July 1st.
You going to pick up your phone?
No, I'm not going to pick up my phone, and I don't think they would have heard that if you hadn't mentioned it. So
next up, finally, is the Toscano Master Age Series 4. This is the 4th cigar of the Master Age series, which debuted in the U.S. last year. I think it had been available in Europe prior to that. So Toscano is an Italian cigar maker. They are a cigar maker based in Italy, but it's not just as much like... That's not why I call them an Italian cigar maker. Italian cigars are different than most of the cigars you read about on Half Wheel, and that's because they are they're just made differently. So they tend to be this size, which is like it's this double perfecto, 6 inches long by I think it gets to like 42 or something in the middle, and it's pre-cut on both ends, and typically, from what I understand, you can smoke the entire thing if you'd like, but my understanding, at least in Italy, most people cut them in half in the middle, so right where the band would be, and then they light the cut end, and smoke from either side of the cigar, right? So you have 2 smaller cigars. They also don't have binders, so they're just wrapper and filler, and they also tend to be made with fire-cured tobaccos, so they don't necessarily need to be humidified in the same way that like a typical cigar you read about on Half Wheel. To me, they've always sort of been great, like short cigars or cigars if you were like going out in a boat type of thing, where a premium cigar may not be able to handle the like environment that you're in, and you may be a little bit rougher on your cigars. These just deliver a ton of like, it's got the fire cured tobacco, so it's a distinct flavor, but it's not like, it is closer to a premium cigar than I would say Cigarillo is, for example, but a unique subset of cigars. And the reason why I put Master Age 4 in here as opposed to some other things, because I think that outside of the Fuente Padron Legends, which no update about when that's shipping, but Father's Day is next weekend, and
can't rush the hands of time, Charlie.
You cannot rush the hands of time. Father's Day is next weekend, so we'll see if it's on shelves by then. Take that for what it's worth. But the Toscano Master Age 4, the Master Age 1, 2, and 3, Toscano was like a sponsor in one of the parties. And that seemed like outside of the legends, like that may have been the cigar of last year in terms of like how many people were excited about it going into the trade show and how many people were excited about it leaving the trade show. It seemed like, I guess they were giving out cigars next to the bar, and that worked out really well from what I understand. And as someone that had to cover the Toscano booth, it was busy as hell for the first, really even the fourth day show, but it took me multiple visits to find someone to talk to because of how many retailers they had in their booth. So I'm sure Toscano is very optimistic about how well this will do this year. And the reason why they're called Master Age, they're aged for 360, not 365 days, in special rooms similar to the Atabey, where they raise the humidity intentionally.
And lower.
I don't know.
Raise and lower.
Yeah, Atabey raises and lowers, and cedar and French oak. I don't think that...
you think they just raise it?
It may just be higher humidity and more controlled. Once again, because the process is just so different with those tobaccos, I'm not entirely sure. All right, I think we're just going to take that one question that I punted on earlier.
Yes.
Not that one, but I'll just leave that on the screen. All right, so Mitch asked, so are they okay with PCA again? That was in reference to, I guess, I'm assuming, Altadis U.S.A. and STG.
You assume correctly.
I think that some of the issues have been solved, but I think a lot of them have not. I'm not privy to those conversations, but yeah, I get the sense that this has less to do with the PCA, whatever is going on between those companies and the PCA, and more to do with what's going on with those companies and their financial performances. I think that they're coming back because they see it as a good economic decision or a necessary economic decision, not because they're like, oh, we think the PCA is doing a great job or that they've addressed our concerns. I do know that moving the date is a big factor for at least one of them, but I wonder what would happen if the date was the same. I get the sense that there's a good chance those three companies would be back. I'm not aware of any softening or any real I'm not aware of any of those companies thinking that the PCA has addressed the majority of the concerns regarding the organization that those companies had in 2019, 2020. All right. So, that's that. And we will be back again next week. Not sure what we're going to talk about. Maybe we'll put things on the screen this time. We'll see.
Maybe.
If you have any ideas, shoot us an email, info@halfwheel.com. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. And
as do I.
That's good. It's good that you are going to appreciate it.
Yes.
And, we'll be back next week and the week after to do more of these, hopefully with fewer technical difficulties, but don't get your hopes up. All right. Enjoy your weekends, and good luck to all the competitors in Le Mans.
Half Wheel's coverage of the 2023 PCA Convention and Trade Show is brought to you by Rocky Patel.